Hello and welcome to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today I am joined by Nikolas Victorson. Would you like to say hello, sir?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, however you may be listening. Thank you for having me on, Mike. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. You do really good work, and you can tell the quality of everything you do just from like the audio quality. I know that you're putting a lot of effort into this, and so to be invited to be content of your production is it means a lot, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
Was uncertain we were going to be able to make this work out within this timeline. You have been stressing to get this thing out, but before we get into some of the meat and potatoes, let's have an appetizer. Tell us about you. Tell us, where you're from, any biographical information that might be pertinent for listeners to know about you, to connect with you.
Sure. Well, I'm not that interesting. I'm just another guy, really. I've got a boring life. I'm trying to raise a family now. Millennial, corporate wagey drone, who just one day I decided to start writing. I always read more than the average person, and one day I thought I'd try my hand at it and couldn't stop. So here I am, and yeah, I'm like I said, I'm pretty much just another guy. But I guess my background in reading and writing, I picked up The Hobbit when I was in 6th grade. We had to do a book report, and I just read, as much as any other kid before that point. But my mom had the collection of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings underneath our computer desk. And I was looking for a book to read. I found The Hobbit, and I was just enchanted, and I dove down that rabbit hole. And I've probably read Lord of the Rings like 10 times since then. Like that's my thing. And got pulled in there. I'm a big fan of the fantasy genre in general. Read all over the place now these days. I finally knocked out Moby Dick last year. I've got some Dostoevsky is next on my list once I can finally get my project here done. So, yeah, just another guy who found a book that he loved and then got pulled into it, and here I am.
Very typical sort of, coming of age into reading and creativity. Did you do any other creative work in the past, visual arts, music, dance, theater, who knows?
It's it's funny. 7th and 8th grade, they had, I think it was called like Power of the Pen or something. It was kind of like the creative writing extracurricular group activity. And, you kind of like audition or try out for it. They give you a couple prompts, and then you write and you turn it in. And they didn't like my stuff. Actually, they gave me like bad grades. So creative writing, they told me it wasn't my thing back then.
Brutal.
And maybe it isn't actually. You'll have to read the book and tell me what you think. But no, I was into music. I was in like a high school band. I played all the instruments: drums, bass, guitar, whatever, lead guitar, and played into college. I've been playing guitar for probably 20 years now.
Nice.
But I think I've always just had like an overactive imagination. Like I could come up with like the creative writing prompts, but just like the discipline of writing, I really had to work on it over time. And whether it's like coming up with songs or coming up with stories, my noggin's always jogging. So
what have you done with music, and do you find that to be a valuable carryover from your time with that into writing in any way?
No, I don't know about the overlap, actually. I picked up the guitar. Actually, maybe there is some overlap. So I was in, I think it was actually also 6th grade. My dad, he got me a drum set. He got my brother a guitar. And after I learned my way around the drum set, I picked up the guitar and just kind of, muddled through it. Like you eventually find some notes that sound good together, and it's really rewarding. It's like learning how to play golf. Like the first time you swing, it's terrible. And then once you finally hit a really good drive, you're like, holy shit, that felt really good. Now I want to try to replicate this. And the dopamine loop gets going. And that's how it was with the guitar. And I just kept going and going. And eventually, you learn more, and you learn how to not just emulate others, but how to create your own. My inspiration, I guess, would be like Led Zeppelin first and foremost, general blues rock, so like White Stripes, Black Keys, that kind of stuff. But you pick up what they do, and then you can kind of make it your own. And I feel like my writing style is similar, where I've got a lot of inspiration from books, movies, TV shows, and you kind of just you get deep enough into them, and you kind of get plugged into the inspiration. Then you can kind of emulate them and then make them your own. I think all stories are basically like retelling of old stories in different ways, to one degree or another. And I think it's the same thing with music. Like it's like a long chain of inspiration and evolution from one to the next. But you get the creative juices flowing too, and I think there's like imagination land lives inside of all of us, and some people tap into it more than others. I think it's a problem for me sometimes with just daydreaming and like not listening when my wife is talking to me. But everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses, and I think as it relates to Semperis, I think that I found something. I kind of discovered it. It's not like I sat down and I didn't have to do too much work actually plotting it out and building it. It really came to me just like through inspiration, and I'm kind of just like a scribe. But you gotta be plugged in, and kind of like you gotta learn how to listen to the muses, whether that's music or whether that's storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. Did you ever put out any music, like recording wise?
Oh, no. I probably hosted some songs on SoundCloud or whatever back in the day, to share with friends or to like submit it to the Battle of the Bands stuff. So I do have a little bit of experience recording music and learning like how to use an equalizer board and compression and things like that. But nothing really serious. You wouldn't find my band on Spotify or anything like that.
Yeah, it goes that way. Who do you consider to be, influential authors, writers for you personally? Stuff you love, books beyond, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, obviously, which you mentioned, but things you return to, or authors you return to, or writers and authors that you consider to be maybe in the alchemical solution of your writing.
Yes. Well, obviously Tolkien. I won't belabor that point. I could go on forever. I'm going to catch flack for this, and there's probably going to be a lot of people that turn this interview off after they hear me say this name. But I think George Martin has. I think that he's not a great writer, but he does some great things, and those things that he is good at are things that I really enjoy. Characterization, building plot, and internal conflict. I think he's a masterful storyteller and writer, and I think he's obviously got a lot of deficiencies, and we don't need to belabor those either. But I read The Lord of the Rings several times, and then I think it was like right after I got out of college, and the Game of Thrones show was getting big, and my cousin had read the book, and he recommended it to me, and I loved it. Again, it's the fantasy genre, which I love. Martin did a really good job building the foundations of heroes' journeys. I thought he was doing a good job kind of sticking to the script that works. And even though some people don't see that, and I don't want to make this podcast, all about a defense of what he's done.
It's your time, If you want to spend it all talking about Tolkien and George Martin, you know, that's fine.
Yeah, no, but you know, I remember listening. I mean, I just loved the story that he was building. I thought it was very powerful. A lot of people misinterpret it, I believe, when they say it's about nihilism or like moral depravity. No, I think actually the good guys were being set up to win because of their virtue, and we just haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm not going to make that full case here, but in any event, I appreciated what he was building. It's a shame that he's too weak to finish building it, but you know, so I got kind of hooked there, and I'd listen to some of the interviews and like read some of the theories on the internet and such. And one of the things he said was, you know, how Faulkner wrote that the only thing worth writing about is the human heart in conflict with itself. And I think Martin does a really good job, not only in A Song of Ice and Fire, but in his other books that he, you know, I've read a couple other of his books. And Martin does a very good job of building internal conflict, making you feel engaged in the reader's, in the character's skin. And that was something I just really appreciated. So I took that away from reading him as kind of like an inspiration for how to write characters effectively. So, you know, those two I've probably spent the most time in. You know, I've read some of the other. I haven't gotten into Wheel of Time yet. I started reading some of Brandon Sanderson. You know, the estimable John Parse, Sheepskin.
Hello.
I think that's a powerful myth. You know, that actually has influenced me to some degree. All of our friends.
No offense to our session here, but the podcast I did with Dr. John T. Parse is one of my favorites of all time. If you have not listened to that, go back and listen to it. You know, just for, I think that episode, that recording, flexes reality and fiction in a very similar way as to what his book and world building is doing.
Yes,
that episode sort of exists within the sheepskin cosmology, to be honest.
Incredible. I love how he puts on the mask. Like he's committed to the bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, but to finish answering your question, you know, aside from authors, I would say Quentin Tarantino and his ability to build tension in a movie scene, that's been an influence on me as well. And, you know, I could criticize Quentin Tarantino for some of the content that he chooses to film, but the way that he films it, no one can deny he's a master of drama. And that's been an influence on me in Semperis as well. You might, you know, as you read through the parts 1, and I think more in part 2, which is not going to be published this year, you might feel some of those.
How many parts are there fleshed out?
There's 3 parts. Semperis is a fantasy epic and a trilogy, and it is 850 pages long. But this part 1, which I'm publishing this month, is just 270 pages.
All right.
It establishes the key players, their internal conflicts, and we come to a turning point in the broader external conflict when all is said and done with part 1. So, you know, I think as you read, you'll definitely note some of the inspirations from Tolkien, probably from A Song of Ice and Fire, George Martin. And again, I'm trying to think if there's any real Tarantino like vibes in part 1. I think there's a little bit, but part 2, you'll probably feel a little bit more. And I think those guys have probably influenced my storytelling style the most in terms of inspiration. And last, I just say, you know, some movies like Godfather, Tombstone, Lion King. I think these are all heroes' journeys that are some of my favorite movies, and I pull a lot of inspiration from those stories as well. I forget who's written and directed all of those, but I'd point to them as inspiration.
Sure. Yeah. So I think 200 some odd pages is a fantastic page count for a novel debut. I think that you're not asking a lot out of, new readers for your journey, your mission into authorship. I think that's a wise decision to trim it into these very manageable chunks. Maybe tell us a little bit about the development of the project and when it started, how you are creating the manuscript, how you've made decisions about editing, anything like that.
Yes. So as I mentioned, I've been proud. I've been a reader. The number of words that I've read is probably on the right side of the bell curve, right? So I've always enjoyed reading, specifically the fantasy genre. And one day after I graduated college, I was sitting in my corporate office, wage slave, Microsoft Excel spreadsheet job. And I was kind of bored, actually. I wasn't really being utilized to my full extent. I'm just sitting there daydreaming, and I open up my Microsoft OneNote and I just start writing. A story comes to my head and I just start writing. And I couldn't stop. Then I started thinking more, and I'm like, okay, I've got an outline, like a story. Let me try my hand at writing it, and I want to publish a book. This was maybe 15 years ago or so.
Good Lord.
Well, I finished that book and I self-published it several years ago. And after letting it rest for a little while and coming back and reading it again, I realized this isn't very good. And that kind of made me upset. I wanted to do it better and do it right. And this particular book was like a different genre, actually. It's kind of like dystopian sci-fi, and I don't know, but we don't need to dwell on it. But so then 2015, I'm watching The Godfather, and the opening scene just strikes me to that movie. I had kind of like a what if moment, and it inspired a thought, and that thought continued to grow, and I started writing notes and outlining, and I realized I have the outline of a fantasy epic, hero's journey type of story, and now I got to figure out the way to tell it. And you might be thinking, like, what does The Godfather have to do with that? But,
given what I know about your story, I can see it. I can perceive it. But go on.
Yeah. Well, so again, now this was 2015, and I'm writing all my drafts in Microsoft OneNote. And it's not until 2018 when this part one, this 270 page project, I get it all into Microsoft Word. And my process is actually to have OneNote on this screen and then Microsoft Word on the other. And I'm literally retyping all the words, because just actually typing them out, I feel like, is a good way to iron out some kinks where you're reading and then writing. You're like, oh, I shouldn't write it that way. I should write it this way. So get it into Microsoft Word, start to share it with some family members. I'm proud of it. And then I keep going into part two. I got to keep writing the story. So I let part one sit there for some time. That was 2018. It took me maybe 3 years until I finally got it into Word. Start writing part two, get maybe halfway done with that. And part two is really the meat. I think it's like 400 plus pages, and I get maybe halfway done with it. I come back to part one, and oh shit, it sucks again. It's happening again. So the process of combing through, ironing out part one, it's been going on for a long time, while in parallel, I've been laying the track for the rest of the book. And I think it was a year or so ago, I finally finished all of part three. So 850 pages in about 8 years in a readable draft where, my family can now, and friends can now read. Here's the full story. And there's typos and there's clunky sentences. But if you want to see this, if you want to digest the whole story, here it is. And once that was done, I decided, okay, well, now I got to start thinking about publishing. And for the last, I'd say, 1 or 2 years, I've just been combing through part one, I don't know how many times I've read these 270 pages.
Over a dozen. I feel like you said you did author's copies, right? Or author proof copies.
Well, yeah. I'm out here in my shed. I'm looking at my bookshelf. I have 13 author's copies, author's drafts printed out. So you submit your draft to KDP and they will let you print and send a copy to your house. It says do not distribute, because it really helps me to like feel and read the physical copy in my hands. I struggle to read things on KDP. Part of that's because I'm like I need to be in the family room with my family, and I can't be locked at my computer all day.
Yeah.
But no, I mean that's just the number of authors. I think the number of times I actually read it on the screen. Maybe 30 times, maybe 40 times, maybe more. I don't know. But anyways, each author's draft copy has progressively gotten better, and it's finally ready. And I thanked you earlier for having me on. I also need to use this opportunity to thank you for pushing me, because my process has been let this thing come to me, let it flow when it comes. And I told you these things, and you're like, no, man, make it happen. And I really appreciate the support, because I lost a little bit of sleep the last few weeks, staying up late and reading and editing more. But and I had to add a prologue because I'll be honest, the first 100 pages it's an 850-page story, and so the first 5-6 chapters I've got to do a little setup and introduction to characters, and it doesn't. I know the modern attention span. You've really got to start with like people are having fire or having sex while they're on fire to capture their attention, but that's just not this story. But I think the prologue kind of maybe helped people, or I think it's going to help pull readers in a little bit more. It is a little bit more exciting. I had to get that in. I had to force the issue, and yeah, I appreciate you pushing me. But that's been the process. Like I said, I've still got my OneNote, Semperis 1, and it'll tell you when you created the new page. It was October 2nd, 2015, Chapter 1, The Good King.
That's amazing.
Here we are now. Yeah, ready to publish in 2020. I'm just stunned, by the way, how fast some of our friends can pump books out. Like I was listening to the Rambo Van Halen interview, and he's like, yeah, it took me a couple months to write this book. And I just, everybody's got their own process. Mine's a little different. I'm not naturally talented, but I understand what makes a good story. I know what good writing is. And it's just really a thing of like discipline and being honest with yourself to, I've had to delete a lot of sentences that I thought I liked, but I know just aren't good after, reading it. And, however long it's got to take, that, that's kind of my perspective. It is what it is. This is my process. There are many like it, but this is my own.
Yeah, that's how it is. I'm not good or fast, but I keep turning stuff out. And I think that what I've discovered with these creative projects, whether it was with music or it's with writing or film or whatever, you can come back to them and you can brush stuff up a little bit. You can add some brush strokes, or you can, tighten the canvas, whatever it might be, remix it, change words, add pictures, reshoot a scene and remake it. And that's okay. These are our projects. We're allowed to do that. We are not locked in by the publishing date, when it goes live. Again, to go back to Parse, he had the same sort of situation with you where he had put out a couple of books that were, I guess, the infantile versions of Sheepskin, and pulled them down and has reworked the material and is now reissuing it again. So, everybody has these different routes to how they create and stuff. And if it takes 10 years, it takes 10 years, right?
Yeah. We are amateurs. For me, like I've got a full-time job. And so most of my writing is at nighttime, and I've got kids and I've got to do their bedtime. And, my wife, God bless her, she wants to like sit in the family room with me and watch some Office reruns, but I'm like, nope, sorry. I've got to write. I'm going to the office. And so I just, it's like an hour or two at nights when I can for however long it takes. And, it's a labor of love. I certainly am not expecting to, make much money by selling this, but I hope that it's an entertaining story with engaging characters people can be pulled into. And if I can impart, a few morals and values along the way, all the better. So this book, I would say it's probably for sensitive young men, quote unquote. It's something that I think like high school boys through college aged men would be really like the target audience. And I think probably men our age could appreciate it as well. But, it's something really, they say you need to write with an audience. Frankly, my audience would be my sons. I want them I want to impart some values, and but you got to kind of smuggle them in, and certainly not be obtuse and like hit people over the head with it. But yeah. I got some things that I want to say. I think fiction is a good way to explore ideas and to make points. But there is an art, obviously. You first and foremost have to entertain and engage people, and that was really my primary focus. Of good writing can make point, but nobody wants to lecture, and so try to keep it subtle. But like I said, you got to pick a target audience, and I think if my sons read this and their perspective on the world changes a little bit for the better for it, then that's all I really care about. And if other sensitive young men get the same impact, all the better.
Without giving it away, maybe tell us some of the premise, some of the setup. What is the world? Who are the characters or factions? A little bit inside of the story, so that we can pique listeners' interests.
Yes. Yeah, so without really spoiling anything, because they broached this topic very early in the book, I can tell you, the reader enters, and the kingdom is facing a sort of a political crisis. Like there's this mysterious fire magic. It's wreaking havoc in the West, in the Wildwood. Nobody really knows what this magic is, how it works, but it's certainly causing chaos. It's putting a lot of strain on, this king is trying to hold shit together. And on top of that, his kingdom is experiencing a little bit of a famine. And on top of that, they're entering, it's their new age. It's like the celestial, the stars are lined up. It's, our new year might be marked on like the winter solstice, right? December 21st. And we picked January 1st. It's close enough, but they have this star keeping method, and it's like, okay, new age is coming. But as we're going into this new age, there's a lot of pressure, and there's this like mysterious fire magic that's coming in. So, one of the point of view characters, I'll tell you, first of all, Semperis is a collection of heroes' journeys. There are multiple point of view characters, and like disparate strings, they ultimately get woven together. It's just the style or the setting is fantasy for that as well. So that's kind of the point of parody. It's a fantasy epic, heroes' journeys. Okay, there's thousands of books like that. I tell you, the point of differentiation, though, imagine in the hero's journey, there's like the exiled prince that returns to save the kingdom. But this kingdom is on the verge of a technological and political revolution. So that's kind of, again, the point of differentiation. And I wanted to tell this particular story because hero's journeys, fantasy, that's what I know best. I think they're very powerful. And yet I'm trying to work some allegorical elements into it that reflect the reality of our modern times, and maybe making a few subtle comments on that reality as I go along. And so, one of the characters is this king, and, you could almost think of him like Tsar Nicholas. Yeah, I kind of had that in the back of my head, because here's a guy, generally a good guy, but he's inheriting ownership of a world that's rapidly changing, and he either lacks the foresight or the will to maintain order through that change. So this fire magic it's just one expression. It's like a mode to help of this broader theme of technological change and its impact on society, and also how and why tyranny might rise in response to the chaos that technology brings. So, that's kind of the scene and the setting. You come into this, and there's all these different characters around the king and really from around the kingdom that come in towards the center into the capital city right as all of this stuff is kind of reaching a boiling point. So I try to take different characters from all over the place. And again, at the start of the book, there's a wide array of characters. And by the end of part 1, you're going to see how they start to weave together and like where this thread points. So I wanted to explore some of these ideas about technology, tyranny, what's the relationship between duty and destiny. I wanted to put people's duties in conflicts with their desires, the characters in the book. But so, my goal is not to make political points. Again, my first and foremost concern is just to entertain the reader. I've got a well-structured plot. I think the pacing's good. I think these characters are colorful too. I can see them so clearly, and I'm really pleased with how they turned out. And so I want to entertain and engage while smuggling some themes of like, there's a lot of emphasis on heroism and fraternity in the book. Again, I mentioned duty in its relationship to destiny, technology in its relationship to tyranny. That's kind of the backdrop and the theme. And again, I had these themes I wanted to explore and use the fantasy setting and the hero's journey archetype to do it. And keeping the plots and character entertaining to the readers. Part 1, there's family drama, there's murder mystery, there's love and war. And with the characters, I wanted, like Faulkner said, like I mentioned earlier, the human heart in conflict is the only thing worth writing about. In conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing about. And I really wanted to emphasize that to tell a good story.
Are you familiar with Robert Bly, Iron John, that book?
No.
Yeah, you should take a look. Yeah, Robert Bly, Iron John. The author is Robert Bly. The book is called Iron John.
Robert Bly, Iron John.
Yeah, it's I would say a must read for you. I've got a copy.
Got it.
And read it before. It's certainly a worthwhile read, particularly if you're thinking allegorically and exploring the hero's journey. I think that book is
perfect.
Right up the Campbell lane. So let us ask one last question. Are there any things you haven't said that you feel you need to, or that we haven't covered in relation to your writing, your new book, Semperis, the scene at large, anything along those lines?
I just want to say, if you're looking for like really artful, like impressive prose or like capital L literature, I might not satisfy you, to be honest. I think, again, some of our friends are so damn talented with the way they can spin sentences and weave words together. And I don't think that I am like an artist with the pen, so to speak. However, if you really like a good plot and engaging characters and characterization, I think I'm an effective writer. But I'm not the most artful. Like purple prose is difficult for me. So if that's what you're looking for, I just want to be upfront and honest. But if you're looking for just an interesting, it's a quick. The chapters are short. I read this when I get a new author's copy. I can read it in like a day sometimes. It's the chapters are digestible, and I think the pacing is pretty good too. There is a little bit of foreplay again to like set up. You got to establish the characters and the conflicts in a story this large. So there is a little bit of that, but once it gets, I think it pulls you through pretty quick. So, I think this is I think I discovered a good story and engaging characters that you'll be entertained to read, and you'll be interested to see where the story goes. And I think once you finish part 1, you'll be curious to I want to know what happens in part two. I honestly believe that. But like I said, there's writers like Melville, or I've read a little bit of Dostoevsky. One book that stands out to me among our friends, Give Up the Ghost by PCM Christ. I don't know if you've read that one yet or had him on here. Like his way with words, I'm just stunned when I read it. That stuff's all a little foreign to me, but I think I've still got a good story that's well told. So if that's what interests you, plot, character, theme, then that's what I have for you with Semperis Part 1, The King's Quest.
Well, hey, Nikolas, I appreciate you taking the time to talk. I'm happy that you got your book released as well. And if I was of any influence in nudging you to get that done, then so be it. I think oftentimes, hey, it took you 10 years. It takes 10 years. That's how it goes. But getting across the finish line is critical. You've done it. Congratulations. And, looking forward to seeing how it performs for you, how it's received, and happy to help with promotion with a session.
Well, again, thank you very much. And I should add, parts 2 and 3 are written already. Part 2 is mostly edited. So I wanted it all to be complete before I published part 1 so that I can just focus on cleaning up parts 2 and 3. I don't want to keep you waiting 12 years to see if Jon Snow comes back to life. I promise that I will not keep you waiting that long. So, that's what's coming next. But yeah, certainly, again, appreciate your support and for letting me come on here. And read Semperis.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks again, and we will talk again before too long.